For the longest time, part of me felt like I deserved what had happened to me. I stopped taking care of myself. I kind of holed myself up and, went into a really big, spell of depression. I had started hating myself so much that I felt like, well, maybe there was a reason why this happened. Maybe I deserved that thing that happened to me. Growing up, I did not a whole lot of racing, definitely a late bloomer. Track and field, was wrestling in high school. Just kind of was living a semi-average childhood. When you're a teenager, you think you know better than everybody. So I was, a young, dumb 13-year-old kid that started hanging out with the wrong kids and the wrong crowd. Started just making dumb decisions and kind of, falling apart from who I was and where I needed to be.
Middle school's hard anyway, but definitely in middle school, I know there were a lot of issues with bullying. I don't think that we realized at the time how negative that group was.
I think there was some times where he was just trying to connect with people. Sometimes those people have ulterior motives, and you get befriended by people that ultimately really aren't your friends.
I was, at that point, desperate to find a home, find a place where I fit in and belonged. Going into high school, that kind of came to a head. One day, we were all kind of hanging out, and things got nasty really quick. And I really didn't know what was going on. He just said, we're gonna go, do dumb teenage stuff out in the woods. There was a little creek running through. I remember just kind of looking at the creek, and then next thing I know, I smell something burning. I look back and I see everybody running away. Then I look down and realize that what I smell is my skin on fire. I was doused in gasoline and was lit on fire. I panicked for a brief moment. I ended up getting myself to the ground and rolling around in the mud and the dirt and stopped the fire. I remember just sitting there, just thinking, what just happened? My brain was just fried. I didn't know what to do. I was kind of frozen in fear. I'm literally sitting there with my legs, charred off. Finally, one of the kids actually came back. I guess he felt guilty for what happened, and he ended up throwing me on his shoulder and dragging me back to his place. And that's when the pain started setting in. I remember the look in his eyes and the fear in his eyes, and it wasn't guilt, it was just fear.
He called me and said, Mom, I think you need to come get me. The back of my leg is burned. It was so severe. It was the entire back of his leg. It wasn't until my mom pulled into the driveway and saw me that I really understood the gravity of the situation, because the moment she saw me, she just started crying in a way that I've never seen in my life, and I still, to this day, get shook by the look on her face. It was horrific. I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen somebody burn the entire back of their leg off. It was horrible. I remember getting to the hospital, and they just had to start, tearing off all the dead skin. I was probably 4 or 5 shots deep of morphine. Even through all the painkillers and drugs, was the worst pain I've ever felt in my entire life. Obviously, I was in physical pain, but I didn't want the stress of what was going to happen, the repercussions, who was going to get in trouble, was I going to get in trouble. I hated that look on my mom's face, and I didn't want my parents to worry. Even in that moment with all the pain going through me, I couldn't stop thinking about all the other things. I couldn't take a moment to try to take care of myself. I was worrying about all these other stupid things that I shouldn't have been worrying about. He was in a ton of pain. It was horrible.
He was having to lay on his stomach for, I don't know, long periods of time because he couldn't move his leg and couldn't, be on his back.
Missed out on a lot of activities that I was into with sports and people and all the things going on at school. Didn't really have any people from school check in or visit. That was kind of the first inklings of some of the, the mental trauma setting hold, was just how alone I felt in that moment. I was just kind of lost and hurt and in a lot of pain.
And I think that escalated too into that there was a lot, I think, anger and rage kind of thing building up into him.
It just got progressively worse and worse. I think that, probably the first couple of years afterwards, I did a decent job of, unhealthily shoving everything down and kind of ignoring it, which, definitely it turned into a lot more long-term pain. Pretty much immediately started having major trust issues with everybody. I started to lose the ability to share my emotions. I just wanted to be over the stress and the anxiety and everything that had happened, and I thought that shoving all that down and not acknowledging it would make it go away and make it heal quicker. Even thinking about it was too stressful, and it just hurt too much. The first time driving a Legends car in Charlotte, I felt at home, I felt at peace. For once, all of the chatter in my head that was the anxiety, the stress, the insecurities, they finally kind of all turned off. And when I was in the race car, I could just focus on the task at hand.
I went up to the window net, leaned in, and he's like, "That is the most fun I've had in my entire life." I mean, and he's never like that. So he instantly fell in love with it.
He gets behind the wheel, he's just all by himself, doing what he wants to do. He's really at his best when he's away from everybody and in the race car.
I had a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms. I was a shut-in, would barely leave the apartment. Just started getting angry over stupid things. I just was always on edge, wanted to pick a fight or get into an argument about pretty much anything. I kind of had to have a couple of moments where I had some pretty big mess ups myself, where my new career as a race car driver would probably come to a grinding halt if I didn't call myself out on my crap.
Welcome to Darlington Raceway, the Southern 500.
Southern 500 back in 2017. Got into a wreck with AJ Allmendinger and Matt DiBenedetto.
Trouble turn one, Cody Ware gets it, AJ Allmendinger.
What was he doing? Hey, go tell the 51 to just quit racing. That one hurt, but I'm fine. Just destroyed.
Afterwards on social media, I got beyond heated and ran my mouth off and said a lot of stupid stuff. I was mad at everybody but myself. I didn't want to take responsibility. Finally, my roommates had had enough too, and I got kicked out of the apartment. And so it's like, if I don't, open myself up and lay it out on the table and call it what it is, my new life is gonna be put on halt, because I have all these demons and insecurities from what I was dealing with in my past. I just didn't want to throw it all away. One of the first steps I had was calling my mom and saying, "Hey, I know you're always telling me about trying some meds and trying some therapy. I'm willing to give it a go."
I believe that therapy helps and medication, and that we could, come up with a plan that would help him.
It was a long process. I've been through a lot of different therapists. There's not a one-size-fits-all. I thought it was going to be quick and easy, like, okay, hey, you're going to sit down with a therapist, you're going to talk through it, bam, it's done, you're better. It's a process. It takes work and effort. You have to wake up every day to make, a conscious decision to get better, to seek help. On a daily basis, human interaction gets a lot easier. You have a better outlook and a mindset, and you don't just wake up in the morning with this anger and this hatred and resentment for who I am and what I've been through. When you can start to see the hard work pay off, it doesn't make the work easier, but it gives you that bit of motivation to keep digging. I wanted to be the person that wasn't there for me when I was going through all these issues. You can see it in the garage. I'm sure you can see it in other sports. There's people that are dealing with things and they're too afraid to talk about it. And the more I saw that, the more passion and fire it put in me to show that, hey, you know, I'm a race car driver, I'm an athlete, but I still deal with problems, and it's okay to deal with problems. Trying to destigmatize the fact that depression and anxiety are these bad things, or you're weird, or you shouldn't have these problems. There are lots of people that hurt and lots of people that put a mask on every day that are dealing with things, and it's okay to feel that way.
I'm really proud of him, and it's a courageous thing to do, you know, that he's using what he's battled with, you know, to make a positive difference.
There's a whole bunch of people that have reached out that said, man, I could hardly get out of bed this morning and get to work, and seeing what you posted made all the difference in the world.
I'd say all in all, I'm proud of where I'm at. Every day is a conscious decision to fight the fight that I'm here to fight. I want to get myself better so that I can have more energy and more time to give back and to be a part of these causes that are obviously so close to my heart.
People, I think, will listen to him, and he really is a down-to-earth person, and he's willing to share some of the scarier parts of his life. I think that is what transcends into other people, and they can get the comfort in that he's real in what he's dealing with. And I think he can save some people's lives, and we want him to save his life too.
I don't hold any ill will towards the people that were involved. I believe in God and believe in a bigger purpose, and I believe that everyone deserves to be forgiven. And at the end of the day, you know, what happened, and, you know, people can change and things can get better. It gave me a lot of battles to deal with internally, but it also put me on a path where I feel like I have a purpose and a mission, and I'm trying to be a part of something bigger now.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is O, H to the OV. I used to move snowflakes by the OC. I guess even back then you can call me CEO or the ROC. Fresh out the frying pan into the fire. I be the music man's #1 supplier. Flying in a piece of paper bearing my name. Got the hottest chick in the game wearing my chain. That's right, not DOC, but similar to the letters. No one can do it better. You can blame Sean, but I ain't invented the game. I just rolled the dice trying to get some change. I done came through the block, but I ain't invented the game. Still alive, it's in my veins. Only God can judge me. Only God can judge me, so I'm gone.
Play it day one with Game Pass.
Start your
show on our Facebook page, on the Hoobazoo website, or on iHeartRadio or YouTube. Joining me in the studio, Richard Uden, Levi, Luis Torres. Fellas, how we doing?
Good, thank you.
Good evening.
All right, good to have you guys all back in the fold today. I know we've been running off doing different projects, but here we are all again. And it's nice to have the band back together. We do start out on a sad note, though. We lost a racer this past week, Justin Owen, Sprint Cup, USAC Sprint Car racer, lost his life at the Lawrenceburg Speedway in Indiana. Very tragic. The kid was 26 years old. He was the reigning track champion there. And just, I haven't heard a lot of details about cause of death or anything like that, but he got high on the track, flipped the thing over, got into the fence, and then he, the rescue crews come in and it was kind of over from there. So a very sad day. I watched a video where they're interviewing his dad, and just to watch the guy, how tore up he was about losing his son, and talk about all the good times he had supporting his son's racing career. Just brought tears to my eyes. But again, Justin Owen, rest in peace. Always hate it when these sort of things happen. Any of you guys familiar with Justin and his career?
Right, no.
I've heard the name just through racing channels, but I haven't. Other than that, I don't know much about him.
Yeah, he was, like I say, he was a rising star on the circuit there. Yeah, and USAC has launched the careers of a lot of guys that end up in NASCAR this day and age. Years ago, guys that started USAC would end up at the Indy 500, but that all's kind of shifted there. So, but and again, always sad to lose a racer. It's always shocking because it's not the norm anymore. The advances in safety over the last several decades makes this the exception rather than the rule, which is a good thing, but it doesn't make it hurt any less when we lose a guy. So, we're thinking about his friends. We're thinking about his family. We're thinking about his fans. We're keeping him in our thoughts and prayers. Rest in peace, Justin Owen. Now, the next big topic I want to talk about is, before we start getting into the Bristol Dirt Race, is Cody Ware, which is this is a story that there's a lot of different ways to look at this. There's a lot of ways to dissect this thing, but the long and short of it is, prior to the Bristol race, there was an announcement by Rick Ware Racing that Cody would sit out the Bristol race to attend to a personal matter, and I'm sure they knew at that time that personal matter was going to become very public very shortly. But as it turned out, Cody Ware was arrested with a charge of, I believe, domestic violence and strangulation. And he was held on a $3,000 bond. And again, he's at this point, he's just accused, and he's not even not been arraigned yet. But NASCAR would have had to drop the hammer, and they suspended him indefinitely. And I don't know. If you ask me, it seems like we're making the guy guilty until proven innocent, rather than the other way around. It just doesn't sit well with me. If the guy did something truly wrong, let the investigation continue, let the courts decide. But just to go ahead and suspend him indefinitely, especially since he's been NASCAR's, for lack of a better word, poster child for mental illness awareness, and he's done some stuff with him. We do know he suffers from autism as well as some other issues there. So that's kind of where I'm at. It leaves it like a bad taste in my mouth. It's just the way NASCAR decided to handle it. So I'm gonna let you guys chime in with some of your thoughts.
Anybody else want to chime in before I get into it?
Go ahead, Luis. It's all yours, bud.
Bottom dollar. If he's convicted for it, I have no regards for him. I've been vocal about him for the longest of times, as dating back a few years. At times, he kind of became a punching line because of his performance not being on par. I mean, look what guys like Bailey Curry or JJ Yaley, what they've been able to do from time to time. They've been able to do runs that are passable. He's been around the Cup Series for over half a decade, with the exception of a couple top 15s on the super speedways due to luck, and in most cases, like last August at Daytona. It always bothered me to the core that he's considered like the guy for it. When you also have Bubba Wallace, who's also dealing with his personal stuff, and people give him help for it. But obviously, that's a whole different story for another time. The fact that he comes out preaching the choir of this whole thing with autists, which yours truly has, and then this thing come out, it's just, I stuff that I'll probably keep off air and stay off air. It just annoys the living hell out of me that this happened. It's just inexcusable if convicted. If it's like similar to what happened with Kurt Busch when they found out in 2015 that he had none doing, then okay, then things will have to be adjusted, and then sooner or later he'll probably be back in the sport. But if that's not the case, you can kiss his NASCAR career goodbye and probably his racing career with it, like his brother Carson.
Yeah, but I mean, again, right now, I feel like it's a little, like I said, if the guy really did this, then let the legal system do what it's meant to do, right? Or let NASCAR do what they're meant to do. But it's a little premature because we do know that sometimes there are folks that will go after a recognized celebrity or somebody with some money, and maybe not all those charges are truthful. And again, I don't know. I don't know the man. I really don't have a dog in this fight, whether he did it or not. I don't know who the female is involved. And certainly the autism is no excuse or a defense even, but I just feel like NASCAR was too quick to pass judgment, because that sort of thing poisons the jury as well. I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it. So, Richard, what do you think? I mean, you know Cody Ware a little bit, don't you?
I'm in passing more than anything. I wouldn't say we know each other, but I think that it's a very difficult. NASCAR have been put in a very difficult position here, in all fairness. Yes, there is the context of innocent until proven guilty and the like, but we all know the current climate that we all live in terms of the concepts of equality and the concept of justice. And, we just need to look in the media and see how it's such a dividing topic these days. And if NASCAR didn't do anything and allowed him to continue to race, there'd be just as many, if not more people vocal saying that he should be suspended than saying he shouldn't be suspended, if not more, as I say. So I think they're in a no-win situation, NASCAR. They've been put in a very difficult situation, and no matter what they do, they'll have detractors and they'll have people criticizing them. But this isn't something that's going to be resolved overnight. These things typically take days, weeks, months, years to resolve themselves. And I think that what isn't helping the situation here is the background and the history of and thankfully nothing to do with these specific topics, but the history of the team per se. Rick Ware Racing is considered a little bit of a fly-by-night organization, and it's like, the way that they run themselves and their business operations don't exactly lead themselves to be considered a credible business. So then when things like this happen, it sort of just amplifies the situation. And it's horrible. And obviously, if this is proven to be the case, then our thoughts go out with the woman that was involved in these altercations. But we need to respect the decision NASCAR's made here. And as I said, they've been put in a very, very difficult position. And you need to let the criminal system run its course and see where it all plays out. But I think for all involved, it is best for Cody to be away from racing. It's away from him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely,
especially with the condition that he has. I mean, I've got some good friends who are in the same position, and an excess attention and excess publicity is probably not the most constructive thing to his well-being right now. And we've got to think, even if he is innocent of that, then we've got to take that into consideration as well. So, I think suspending him is a good thing. He needs to, get the help he needs if appropriate, and NASCAR work with the authorities to find the resolution.
Yeah, I think the wording was pretty harsh to say suspended indefinitely. You know what I mean? That sounds like we just kicked you out. I mean, they could have ordered it suspended pending investigation. Yep. Not that he would be any less suspended, right? And again, I'll be the first to tell you, if these charges are true, I've got no respect for somebody that would raise a hand to a woman, none whatsoever. But I also do believe strongly in letting the justice system do what it's intended to and investigate fully. So, but I don't know what kind of evidence there is. I don't really, I haven't, researched any legal documents to see what's been found and what hasn't. It's not my business, but at the same time, it is a story that that's certainly warrants us speaking about. Lee, you have any comments here, buddy?
Frank, I agree with you 100% on the harshness that NASCAR has used. Suspending indefinitely. That's a very big pill to swallow. I think NASCAR could have used a little bit better terminology. Like you said, maybe suspend him pending criminal he's suspended until pending criminal investigation charges and the outcome of the case. But when you say, "Oh, we're suspending you indefinitely," I mean that's you're fired. Like, even if he is proven innocent in a court of law, he's already got a tarnished name. NASCAR's already tarnished his name, and luckily the racing team is family owned, so he's not, the car is there. But sponsorships, I mean, sponsors aren't going to be running to back him. I do, like you said, raising a hand to another individual is not the right thing, but he does need to go through the judicial system. And, I do think NASCAR was very harsh on, they do need to distance themselves. I agree with that. They need to say, hey, we need to back off. You need to take care of this. It's a personal matter. And until it's complete, we're just not going to be associated with you. But I think the terminology was much too harsh. But I do get it. It's a business decision. You've got to distance yourself from that. But like I said, Frank, I think you're spot on with the terminology just wasn't right. I definitely think they could have worded it in a different way to get the point across that, hey, we're not gonna be involved with this guy right at the moment.
Yeah, well, we'll have to just see how this plays out in the coming weeks and months. Certainly a developing story. Another developing story revolving NASCAR involves Chase Elliott, who's been out for a number of weeks. It was announced earlier today that he will be back in his car at Martinsville. He's, I don't know how bad his leg is still hurting, but evidently he feels well enough to run Martinsville, which is actually a tough track on the legs there, because you're doing a lot of braking. It's not like a Daytona, hold it wide open and steer the thing. There's a lot of footwork involved in the Martinsville there. So, but again, Chase is a professional, a consummate professional, and he's a heck of a driver. And we've seen these sort of things before, where these race car drivers are injured and they're given a prognosis of, so many weeks to recover, and they end up coming in early because, number one, because these guys are so fit, and number two, they see some of the best doctors that the country has to offer. And in a sense, some of these guys are super athletes. I mean, you remember when Sebastian Bourdais shattered his pelvis? And he was back like 3 weeks ahead of schedule too, and fine. So, combination of just that really top-notch care and the fact that these guys are in top physical shape. So I don't feel like Chase is going to miss a step. I would imagine
the way he did when he broke his leg.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But he wasn't.
Yep.
But he
Sorry.
wasn't in. He wasn't in a race car when he did that, though. So
let's just hope we good.
yeah,
Nothing
Richard, you
happens
win the
at
internet
Talladega.
today. Yeah. So
Sorry.
Well, I mean, Martinsville's still going to be a test for that leg. Talk about jumping in the deep end of a pool on that.
I
One.
was going to say if he could last the 500 laps at Martinsville, he's good for the rest of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure
it's a
Chase
tough track.
Chase has a huge fan base. I'm sure they're thrilled to see him back. And he's had some great runs at Martinsville. Certainly. So it's a good track for his return. But let's talk about the dirt race in Bristol, which it looks like after this is the third year we've done this now. Looks like it's lost some of its gimmick, lost some of its luster, certainly has lost some of the fans in attendance. The crowd was a little lighter compared to the last couple. Again, it is Easter Sunday again. Bristol's a ticket that, if you have solid plans for Monday, maybe you don't want to buy a Bristol ticket because Bristol has a history of getting rained out. So the crowd was light. The TV ratings were down. And the racing seemed a little more mild than the last couple of years, if I remember. The first year was pretty tough. A lot of those guys had a real tough time getting around. Now these guys have a couple under their belt. But it was the dirt star, Kyle Larson, who spends a lot of his time on dirt, winning the thing at the end of the day. So, Louise, you get a chance to tune in to Bristol?
Easily the best one out of the three by a country mile. There's no question that this one, when the drivers finally got it together, because I will say this much, the number of cautions to the officiating were the biggest detriment to this otherwise good race, especially towards the end of stage two, where we finally saw some really good racing unfold between the RCR duo of Kyle Busch, Austin Dillon, and you had Tyler Reddick in the mix. When we had racing, it looked really good compared to the previous 2 years where it was just dreadful, forgettable, and frustrating to watch from time to time. Mostly weather would parlay into that, but this time, aside from Friday, we actually had a pretty tame weekend with weather with the exclusion of Friday, like I mentioned. But it should come to no surprise that Christopher Bell winning this one. It shouldn't be. I mean, Bell has been one guy that has gotten better over time, especially since his win at Loudon onwards, that to the point that he's basically gives his best driver almost in a landslide. Hamlin has not been doing too well. Truex has not had luck on his side at all, unfortunately, even though he did really good this time at Bristol.
Oh, did I say Kyle Larson won?
Yeah. I was going to correct you, Frank.
I don't know what Dale race I was watching. But yeah, you're right. Now that I recall,
Larson was
yeah, and Larson's the guy who said we need to stop racing on dirt.
Yeah, we need all the wins we can get, Frank. I'm not having you taking that one away from us.
Yeah, okay, yeah, no,
Yeah.
It's Christopher Bell all day long. Yeah, I remember it now. I don't know why.
It became that way because of his scuffles with Brian Priest all throughout the afternoon that eliminated Larson.
Yeah, and then Ryan Priest did a nice little Ricky Bobby. Real nice, Jamie. Got it at Target,
Yeah.
So, and that's going to probably cost him a couple of bucks, right? What's the going rate for giving the finger $40,000? That would they penalize Hamlin?
I didn't give the finger. Yeah,
50.
Because he admitted he took out Ross the same way Dale Jr. admitted he spun out in 2004.
Yeah.
25 points is the biggest issue for Denny, I think, right now without a win.
Certainly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And going back to Bell, it's a much needed result, a much needed win for the organization, because when you really think about it, they have not been the same in a long while, aside from Bell, who's really stepped up. And I said that one of these days that probably Bell's going to be the face of Joe Gibbs Racing, to the point that some people said that the only reason why Bell may not be allowed to run out of dirt racing is because Gibbs may know and do know that they're going to be, you have Bell at your pedestal. You don't want to lose Bell over something where it could affect his racing career.
Yeah. I've always really liked Christopher Bellows had a lot of respect for him. I saw him win an Xfinity race one time. I think it was in Kentucky. And I was just really watching this guy, watching his racecraft. And this when he was, in his, I guess it was his championship season or the season he did really well in Xfinity. And I was just really didn't know much about him, but I kept a close eye on him all day. And yeah, I'm like, yeah, this kid's he's going to be big in Cup soon.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, certainly. But as far as you mentioned earlier, as far as the gimmick has it worn off, I think this past race might have saved it just a little bit to where I'll give it one more year and see if it really has its purpose. But just one race may not define. It's like with Chicagoland. People like to talk about Chicagoland being all this great, but most people look at it as like, oh, it was only good because of the 2 finishes before it got dropped off the schedule. This one was a fine race. It's a shame that we didn't get to see Reddick catch bell and the cautions. The Kyle Busch one, I get it might be more or less of a safety standpoint, but did it really need to be out? Honestly. And there's some that you saw them spin but got it going, but they brought out a yellow. And then other times they got it going and they still brought it. There got to be some consistency out here with these yellows from time to time, especially on dirt, where fortunately we didn't see a big disastrous multi-car collision aside from the last lap. But other than that, it was one of the more better races of this season in my book.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough call with the yellows, though, right? When a guy starts spinning, your natural reaction to fly him to get the yellow out there, because you don't know if that guy's going to gather it up or if he's going to collect the guys behind him. You know what I mean? And then once the yellow is out, it's out.
In short tracks, you've got to throw the yellow as soon as somebody in because you've got no time. It's not like a mile and a half where you could be 20 seconds before another car passes. You've got 2 or 3 seconds before a car passes, and if a guy starts rolling down the track or tries to correct, because you see the guys when they spin on on the apron or whatever, they try and flick it back around and they come onto oncoming traffic. I think as soon as anybody spins on a half-mile track, especially a dirt track, they've got to throw it. They can't. It sounds horrible. They can't leave it up to the drivers to sort themselves out because they ain't the smartest knives in the drawer. They're going to want to, if they've spun out, they're going to want to get back on, even if it's not safe. Screw anybody else behind them. So it's a very, very difficult situation they find themselves in. And you're right with the say they've got to be consistent, but I think they're erring on the right side of consistency there with too many cautions. I know they're not doing crazy high speeds. It's not like a Michigan or a Pocono or somewhere where you're hitting the good end of 200 miles an hour. They're doing relatively low speeds, but you can still cause some damage, and especially on some of these courses where some of the smaller tracks where the crews are so close to the infield. You punt somebody down pit road, and you can cause some damage down there. So I think they're doing the right thing there. But as for the actual race itself, I think that reading between the lines, this was the dirt race's last chance to be a success. I think the first 2 years weren't great racing. But I think it's redeemed itself and saved itself for a couple more years at least. Now, in my opinion, I think dirt racing is great. I think it's fun. But why do you have to change Bristol into a dirt track? Go to a dirt track. I think every year we've been there. I think I've made the same comment on this show, and NASCAR still haven't listened to me.
That'd make too much sense just to go to a place that already got the dirt there.
Yeah. Don't try and reinvent the wheel with Bristol. Bristol's a good track. If you can't get people to turn to Bristol,
then move it back to March, where it used to be.
Well, I think March is even worse because of the weather. Bristol you can't have Bristol in March, April. You need it in May, June, July, August, September. As soon as you start getting into, I remember going to a Bristol race, the fall race, and I think we got about 20 laps of racing in, and I think I shrunk 2 sizes in the wash. It was that wet that day. It was miserable. It was horrible. And they raced on the Monday. And, that's the time. And I know you're saying trying to bring it to March, but you've got to guarantee races. And having it on, Easter Sunday at 7 p.m. is ridiculous because a lot of people get Monday off. A lot of people get Monday off. It's not like it was back in the day when people would get Good Friday and Easter Monday off on a pretty regular basis. I can't remember the last time I had either of those 2 days off. So if you're going to run it on Easter Sunday, run it at 2:00 or 1:00 or whenever, and have at it. Don't try and run it at 7:00 because the race isn't going to finish till 10:00 at night. And if you live more than an hour, 2 hours away from Bristol, and with the roads around Bristol, that's probably 2 hours from Bristol is probably about 25 miles. You're not going to get people coming from North Carolina. You're not going to get people coming from Virginia to these races. Unless you have it at a sensible time.
Right, agreed. Yeah, in March.
They've just had a much better track record in March than in April.
Well, it could snow in March in Bristol.
Yeah.
So. But so that's neither here nor there. So, but again, we are off to Martinsville next. Luis, who won the Cup or the Xfinity and truck races in Bristol?
Sure. Trucks was Logano. Xfinity has never run at Bristol dirt. They to do dirt. Period.
Good for them. They do a lot of road courses, though, which I like.
Yeah, that's pretty much their spiel. The road courses, while trucks at Cup get the dirt.
Do the Xfinity do any road courses now that Cup doesn't do?
I think Cup picked most of them up.
Yeah, I think because they used to do Road America, didn't they? And
doesn't Xfinity still have Mid Ohio as a standalone?
I believe so, but trucks run in Mid Ohio. Xfinity got Portland out, and trucks will not be. No, Xfinity has Portland, and now they have Sonoma. Trucks had Sonoma a year ago. They don't this year.
Right, but the Cups are not at Mid Ohio, right?
No,
right.
They haven't been.
Yeah,
it's Road America that has been dropped out of the road course schedule in favor of Chicago,
and we'll see how that goes. Yeah, there's the seeds of opposition are getting a little loud in the city from what I hear. So, God love them. I hope they can pull it off. But getting a street race in the big city is a tough one. If you get one down, your detractors get louder. I mean, just for reference, the INDYCAR Grand Prix of Baltimore. It was a great event that only lasted 2 years because you got the NIMBY crowd there. For reference, the INDYCAR Grand Prix of Boston that never got off the ground. Thanks to local opposition. Yeah, opposition plus a shady promoter. Those two. Yeah, so that's
after today.
I want to say that guy's doing time now. I think every now and again, our producer Keith Hayes will forward me an article about this guy being in court again. So,
yeah, my sense is that if you throw a baseball after a 482-footer home run and back onto the field, I have no faith of the NASCAR crowd maintaining crowd control.
Okay, all right, that's an interesting analogy.
It's like it's like if you catch a 482-foot home run and you're a Cubs fan that throws it on the infield, it's like, come on, man, keep it. It's 482 feet homer. Come on. So I have no regard. I have no faith in Chicago crowds in general right now.
Yeah, so let's just make sure we don't try to put a race in Philadelphia then, okay? Because those Philly fans are horrible. Yeah, those are the guys that threw snowballs at Santa Claus. So
and they still climbing light poles even though they added grease and rubber.
Yeah. So all right, so we'll have to save that for our Horrible Fans podcast. Speaking of which, so let's make some picks for Martinsville, and then we'll move on talk about IndyCar a little bit. So, Louise, who do you like for Martinsville?
I think you can't go against a Hendrick or a Gibbs driver, but I feel like in this case, I think history repeats itself. William Byron,
okay. All right, Lee. Any strong opinion on who could win at Martinsville?
Martinsville is tough. I mean, I'll go for I'll go for Chase Elliott. Hopefully, he gets a good welcome back in a W. So,
Yeah,
that'd be good for him. And I'm going to go with Kyle Larson since I evidently thought he won Bristol.
So one thing, one quick note on Martinsville before we move on. This could be the first race where we see NASCAR's rain tire and rain package on an oval.
Yes.
The weather forecast for Sunday afternoon is pretty smelly. So much so that I was going to go to the race, but I'm going to skip that because it could get. I don't really fancy sitting in the cold, pouring rain for 4 hours.
On metal bleachers, that's the best. I love
Yeah,
doing
exactly.
that.
You mean to tell me the nice little run of no red flags could come in? I know. Hopefully, it doesn't rain that bad enough where they have to actually stop.
I don't know what the rules are and how they, because you're on the road courses. NASCAR used to be very restrictive as to when teams would go onto wet weather tires. If it started to rain, they would red flag the race and make everybody go onto a wet tire, and then let them make the choice of going back onto a dry tire on their own whim, if you like. What they're doing for the oval package, I don't know, but yeah, the cars will be decked out fully with wet weather tires and windshield wipers for the oval. Oh, sorry, for the oval race there at Martinsville. And this could be the first foray into wet weather racing on an oval. Now, some feedback on that. Talking to some of the people here, when they've tested in the past, they did 3-car test with a water truck. And the feedback wasn't great from the drivers in terms of visibility. So what it would be like if there's consistent rain with 35 plus cars on the track is going to be an interesting situation here. But we'll see what happens.
I think if it rains at Martinsville this weekend, they ought to throw a little bit of dishwashing soap on the track, and best 50 laps, last man standing wins the pot, wins the old clock. Those are always fun races as a kid.
Sounds like my college days when we used to pour washing up liquid into the fountains in the middle of town.
Oh yeah.
It's a good thing. It's 400 laps this race. So
yeah,
I don't. I think
500.
Yeah.
People will lose count. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Oh, it's easy. It's easy to lose count at Martinsville. They tick off so fast.
And I did thought about the grass too. Fortunately, they don't have that grass in the corners here. I know people threw a fit. I can understand, but in this scenario, it's a good thing there's no grass on the rumble strips that into the corner.
Yeah,
that would be terrible, especially in these conditions.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Martinsville already doesn't have a lot of banking to kind of drain the tracks. So if it rains pretty hard, it could be, could be some puddling up and stuff. So, but we'll have to see how that plays out. I mean, I'm sure if they just have kind of like a light sprinkle, they'll be able to run through. But if you get anything kind of like a deluge, I don't know if we're going to be, anything kind of close to. You remember that Xfinity race on the Roval a couple years ago?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one they surprised me that they kept going in that one. That was a mess. I mean, I wouldn't drive my road car in that. I'd pull off and go to McDonald's.
Let
it blow over a little bit,
Is that how that was Cody Ware's best race of his entire racing career?
Speaking of Cody Ware, funny how everything kind of loops back up.
That's all I remember about that Xfinity Roval race.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to talk about the IndyCar series a little bit. There was a bit of an announcement. It's not officially official yet, but pretty likely to happen that there will be a 34th entry in the Indy 500. That's going to be RC Enerson, friend of the show here. He was on with us a couple of years ago prior to getting bumped from the Indy 500 last year with Top Gun Racing. But he's going to be there's a whole ugly little legal action between him and his dad, the Enersons. And the Enersons, again, are the owners of the Lucas Oil Racing School. If you're not familiar with them, there was a falling out between him and Top Gun, and there was a little kind of controversy over who owned the two Dallara chassis. The Enerson said they were theirs, and Top Gun tried to keep them for their own, but they had to go to court with it, and ultimately the court sided with the Enersons. The Enersons took possession of those two DW12 chassis, so they've aligned themselves with Able Racing, which is an Indy NXT team, and those guys I think their shops are in Indiana, but they're based out of Louisville. They're kind of local to me, the Able family, and they've done well in the junior series. But here they are going to step up doing Indy 500 entry, with their existing engineers and pit crew. And I'm not sure if they're going to hire anybody else in there or whatnot, but that's kind of what we're looking at. And some folks think they're going to be the long shot to make it in.
I mean, we said that about a couple of drivers in the past, and that's somehow found a way to make it. So you never,
Yeah. I mean,
never know.
what was it? Kyle Kaiser bumped Alonso out of the 500, right?
Yep,
And you'd have thought Kaiser would have been a long shot. So you never know. You got to look right now at the guys that are kind of underperforming, like the entire Rahal Letterman team. You know,
I think they'll bounce back. Honestly, they're gonna have to bounce back. But you have a good point. I think Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. I think Rahal will be okay. I'm more concerned about Harvey and Lundgaard to some extent, and you also have Catherine Legg. I'm more concerned about Harvey.
Legg, yep, and then again you got a guy like Canapino with 0 oval experience, right? So Enerson's light on experience, but he's run a couple of IndyCar races. He hasn't made the 500 field yet, but I want to say he's run the Freedom 100 in IndyCar. But you're talking about a pretty inexperienced team when it comes to the top level. But again, we've seen stranger things happen. You know what I mean?
I mean, Willpower
almost got James Hinchcliffe got bumped at one time. You know.
You even had defending champions miss the 500, even the world champions.
Ryan Hunter-Reay got bumped at one time.
Bobby Rahal,
both Penske cars in '94. Yeah, that was a crushing one there, or '95 rather, because the Penske won the race. They dominated the race in '94, and both cars got bumped in '95. So yeah, we'll see. But anyway, it'd be exciting to have a bump in there. To have 34 entries. I think that's probably going to be the cap on it. I think that was the last available Chevy engine lease. And Honda's already said they're maxed out with their engine leases. So 34, one person gets bumped. All right. So moving on to Long Beach coming up. And McLaren has got an announcement about their 500 livery. If you recall, they did a special livery for last year's 500 with 3 of the ugliest cars you could imagine that were they were like blue and orange and olive drab, green. Oh, but Felix's was ugly.
Are we going guacamole this year? Is that the?
I mean,
what we're doing. What McLaren's doing this year is they're doing what they call a Triple Crown livery, right? So you guys are familiar with racing. The Triple Crown is considered to be the Monaco Grand Prix, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and the Indianapolis 500. This is not an official trophy or title, but one guy has won it, Graham Hill. He's also the guy that made it up. He goes, hey, I have this Triple Crown. Nobody's been able to repeat it. 2 guys recently are pretty close. That would be Alonso has 2 out of the 3, and Juan Montoya has 2 out of the 3. But Montoya lacks Le Mans, and Alonso lacks the Indy 500. But McLaren as a manufacturer has won all 3. So the one car will be, I think it's Pato's car is going to be like an all black livery, very similar to the McLaren F1. What's it called? The F1 or the GT1?
It would have to be GT probably.
That won Le Mans. And then the Felix's car is going to be the Marlboro McLaren livery from 1984, which would emulate Alan Prost's livery when McLaren won their first Monaco Grand Prix. And then McLaren's first Indy 500 was won by Johnny Rutherford in the all papaya Gulf McLaren colors, and that'll be Alexander Rossi.
Fingers crossed. Go ahead.
Yeah, the 4th McLaren going to be Tony Kanaan, and it's going to have a combination livery that celebrates the whole team's heritage, right? All these cars are set to be unveiled Friday at Long Beach, which is a great place to do it. There's always a lot of folks Friday at Long Beach, because that's the day they give out the free tickets in the newspaper, and you get a lot of curiosity seekers out there. So that'll be neat to see. I'm really interested to see how the Marlboro livery is going to look, because that's something that's just iconic livery in racing for years and years and years that we haven't seen since 2009, 2008. So
9 probably, because
8 or 9, yeah.
Elio won with the colors
in 09, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
It was 2010, and they came with just the straight Penske.
Yeah, the black and white Penske or the
black and white
Verizon.
red. Yeah. So, all right. So, but then we've got Long Beach coming up. Be the third race on the IndyCar season. Always a great race. You look at some of the guys that have won there in the past, guys that have just dominated that race. Like you gotta look at Rossi, just killed it one year there. Last year Newgarden won it. He had a great run there, so we'll try to look at a winner for this year. It's hard to look past Rossi, honestly. But again, I don't think that the street course program at McLaren is as strong as it is at Andretti. So if you force me to make a pick today, I would go with Colton Herta.
Which is a good choice because he won the pole a year ago. He was doing well, but then a sequel to Nashville 2021 happened.
Well, sure, yeah. So hopefully, in the next sequel, it have a happier ending. It's like, Rocky 1, he loses to Apollo, but then in Rocky 2, he wins.
Oh, God.
But he didn't win in the second version.
How did we get back to the streets of Philadelphia racing? My God.
but I get
Good Lord.
I get, Herta's not a bad choice, and he'll definitely need it. The whole Andretti organization needs it because they've had nothing but wrecked cars so far.
They've shown so much promise this year, and all their off-season work has paid dividends in testing, qualifying, but they've had the worst luck, whether it's guys running them over on the first lap or Grosjean bumbling on the last lap when he was in a position to kind of get right there in the mix. So Rossi with that penalty at Texas, which was heartbreaking and largely undeserved still, if you ask me, because I watched it again. So Richard, who do you like for Long Beach?
Oh,
I already took your boy Herta, so
I know, yeah. Let's go with Grosjean. He's had a pretty good, he was looking good at St. Pete, and then it all went horribly wrong for him. So let's go with Grosjean. Why not?
All right, and Lee?
I'm gonna go with let's go with Newgarden.
Newgarden? Sure, yeah.
Yep.
Yep. So Louise, that leaves you.
I still have to wait for practice and qualifying, but Palou has done quite remarkably well at the street courses.
Yeah, Palou's a good pick.
That's a good pick. That's a really good pick.
I think Palou will get it, and I still feel like that Pato, that win may not be till the 500 at the very moment. That's super early to tell right now. We'll see it in testing in a couple weeks.
All right, so nobody picked Rossi.
Yeah,
which poor Rossi. I mean, well, I wouldn't pick Rossi till his force. I told you, I think he made a gypsy woman mad. And she hexed him, but until he gets the monkey on his back and wins the race, I'm not going to put any money on that guy.
But I put money on him 2
like
weeks ago, and he let me down. So I'm
and
not.
Then watch him win the pole, and then it runs away with the win, and it's 2018, 2019 all over again.
And then we'll know that the curse is broken. So,
mind you, he did win at the Brickyard weekend, which I honestly already forgotten about. He already won.
Yeah. He snuck that one in. Yeah.
I mean, are we gonna start calling Rossi like the Chicago Cubs IndyCar? With the goat and everything.
Not yet.
Are we at that point? No, not that yet. Okay.
No, we're not even close to the century mark. So,
no. Why would you throw a 482 homer back to the ballpark?
Back to that again, right?
At least the Mariners won that. At least the Mariners won, so I'm happy with it. But still, come on, man.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of circle backs tonight. It's all right.
Yeah. So, Richard, what we got shaking in Formula One? Things seem pretty quiet coming out of there, but
pretty quiet. I mean, we should be preparing for China this weekend, but of course, not all the world's back to normal yet, as we know. So we're in the middle of our 4-week break between Australia and Baku. So yeah, not a huge amount. One thing that is worth noting, though, for some of you historians out there, roughly 30 years ago was the European Grand Prix at Donington Park, which probably demonstrated the single greatest lap in Formula One history by Ayrton Senna on the opening lap of the race. I think he started fourth on the grid, lost a place on the start going into the first corner, so was fifth at the end of turn one and was leading the race by the end of lap one. Passing the likes of Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill, and Alan Prost, on that first lap. And if you get a chance to watch it on YouTube, it's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Car craft around a pretty difficult track. In the wet, in that slick sort of the conditions that guys like Senna thrived in. So if you're pining for some Formula One action this week, check that out. It's pretty damn impressive.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I remember it 30 years ago because I was on vacation with my parents and they wouldn't let me watch the damn race, and I had to go around some old house that I had zero interest in, and the race was going on at the same time, and I was really mad. And I'm still not over it 30 years later.
How do you really feel?
I know.
Richard, how do you really feel about this?
Yeah.
I know that feeling. That's me with the 2020 Daytona 500. I refuse to go back to watch it. But that's a different. There was another one with it, but if you're a Michael Andretti fan, look away. Because he collided with Van Linger, who had like a superb qualifying run too.
Yeah, he was out. Yeah, they both retired on the opening lap of the race. Phenomenal driving and craftsmanship there. It really was. Really, really was. And, those two Williams cars were probably the most technically advanced cars ever in Formula One, from a suspension and obviously not the engines compared to what we have now, but from a driving standpoint, the active suspension, all of the tricks and the electronic gizmos and gadgets that those cars had, phenomenal. And Senna just drove around them like they weren't there. It was incredible performance. And one of the, there's that lap, and then the lap that he did in qualifying at Monaco in 88 or 89, I think it was, where he beat Prost in the same car by like a second, and actually scared himself. If you ever read the story of that lap, he beat Prost, but I think it was about a second or so. Frank, you probably remember this, by about a second, and then he was going faster on his next lap and actually had to back out of the lap. And when he was asked about it later, he said he became aware that he wasn't in control of the car. It was like a subconscious thing, and he scared himself because he says, I wasn't in control of the car. It wasn't me driving the car. And he backed out halfway around the lap, and he was supposed to go even faster. And it's amazing mentality of these guys. But
Senna was so precise and so consistent. I always remember the story. It was with the Grand Prix in Dallas. They had a couple practice sessions, and they went out for qualifying, and Senna hit the wall, right? And they said, "Well, what happened?" He goes, "The wall moved." He said, "The wall moved."
Yeah.
And they said, "What?" Well, it turns out they did some track work, and they moved the wall about an inch, and he was so precise with his movements, and then that wall was not where it was supposed to be.
And that, my friends, is why that's why you don't try to lean on those things, because you can never know. That's one of the big things about those photo meetings they mentioned. Don't move those temporary walls or try to, because any inch of a movement, it will be noticeable.
Absolutely. All right, so we got 2 more weeks off till we're in
Azerbaijan.
That's one of my favorite races. That was really grown on me.
Yeah, it's certainly grown into it, hasn't it? And it's the first sprint race of the season.
Oh God!
So we'll have a sprint race on the Saturday afternoon, and it's sort of when they started out at Baku, everybody was on about that little like tight twisty section around the castle, which is single file pretty much.
Yeah,
and we haven't really had any major sort of blockages there. I remember Charles Leclerc sort of sticking it in the wall there in qualifying a fefew years ago, but outside of that, the majority of the action goes into turn one, when we all remember the Red Bulls hitting each other and Lewis leaving it in the sort of warm up mode and his brakes failing going into turn one, and then you remember going into turn three when Grosjean was hit by nobody but still tried to blame somebody.
Ghost Rider.
The Ghost Drivers, yeah, and it's a really it's the fastest street circuit in the world. Or no, that's Jeddah now, maybe, I don't know. They keep changing it every 5 minutes, but no, really good. And we're already doing the preview for the Baku race 2 weeks ahead of time. So let's move on.
Yeah. I'm still I'm blocking the Australian Grand Prix out of my mind. I'm kind of good. If I didn't have prior commitments at my work job, my arena job in Seattle, I would have ripped a thing or two about that Grand Prix, guaranteed.
Yeah. All right, so Lee, you got about 8 minutes. Fill us in on what's happening in the world of NHRA. I know you had a little bit of sad news you wanted to share.
Yeah, so it's not Craig Breedlove. He is a world-renowned Bonneville Salts Flat driver. He's the first man to break 400, 500, and 600 miles an hour out at Bonneville. He passed away first part of April. Not really associated with the NHRA, but I mean, he's one of those drive really fast in a straight line type drivers. So, just tough news there. He was a pioneer, racing. So sad to see him go. Surrounded by family when he passed, so that was a good thing. Other than that, everybody's just getting amped up for the four wides in Vegas. It's if you've never seen four wide racing, this is a lot of fun. It's something to behold. Two wide is loud and obnoxious. Four wide is way better. So
yeah, I don't know that I've ever watched four wide drag racing. I'm interested to tune in.
Oh, it's a hoot.
Yeah.
It's fun. It goes quick because you're dealing four at a time, and the only time it's not all four of them is the finals, and it's only two. But yeah, it gets fun. Lots of gamesmanship, and you'll see a lot of staging duels. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. You'll see a lot of staging duels at the four wides, just playing mind games with everybody. So the only other real news, last week's guest, Camrie Caruso, she picked up another sponsor for Vegas. There's going to be a primary sponsor. Big Jim Audio is going to be her sponsor for the Vegas race.
Big Jim Audio.
Yep. Big Jim Audio.
Doesn't that sound like one of those guys on late night TV? My prices are insane.
I guess Big Jim Audio, I had to go look them up. They're pretty big on the in the car audio world. So yeah. But it was good to have her on the broadcast last week. Sorry we lost communications with her, but I've talked to her since last week. She says she's excited to come back on the show and give it a go the next time we're ready to have her on. So that ought to be fun.
It ought to be fun. Yeah. She was very pleasant for the little bit that we were able to bring her in. And again, I apologize to our viewers about that. So guys, we got about 5 minutes left. Any topics we missed, or any final thoughts?
I think one thing I want to bring up about Chase Elliott earlier is the fact that in the 6 races that he was gone, I think Jordan Taylor, the one race he had, was feasible. But Josh Berry, the fact he was able to get a top 5 and a top 10 in his short stint in the NICAR is applaudable. I think as the interim crew chief also deserves such praise to put Berry in excellent position at Richmond to get runner-up, but also the third race at Bristol until he got involved in an incident, because I feel like those kind of runs will come a long way, and maybe a couple crew chiefs would be knocking at his door to see if they want to spice things up, because those are the type of calls that probably will pay dividends. And with the Elliott announcement, I was thinking Martinsville would be the one race that Berry might do really well on merit.
Yeah,
well, we won't get to find out.
We're not going to find out this week. Yeah. So, but the thing is, you gotta applaud the guy for just making the most of the situation. I mean, like, oh, well, here's my big shot, right? I'm in a top car with a top team that's well funded, and let me just get the best results I can, so that when somebody's thinking about, oh, who would I like to hire for 2024, my name pops up in their head. So good job, Josh Berry, though. He had
to make a comment on that quickly, actually. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
So I just pulled up his record here, and in the XFINITY series, he's had 4 or 5 wins, maybe. Came 4th in the championship last year in a JR machine. I mean, he's in his early 30s, so he's not like he's youngest new kid on the block sort of thing. but he hasn't really done anything. And then, okay, he gets the break and gets a chance to drive, for INDYCAR, which is fantastic. And he's certainly taken advantage of that with a couple of strong finishes, especially at Richmond, predominantly on a strategy call, but you still got to do what you got to do when you get given the opportunity. But it's sort of, I don't know. Are we getting to the stage now where NASCAR is becoming more and more along the Formula One lines, where the car is such an intrinsic part of your performance? And this is no disrespect. If Josh Berry had stepped into a front row car or a Rick Ware car, for example, he certainly wouldn't have been running in the top 10. Would anybody have paid any attention to him? There's probably a pretty long list of guys out there that could have jumped into that 9 car and done equally as well. Are we? And this is not being disrespectful to the guy at all. He's taken an opportunity when it's come his way. But are we sort of making something out of nothing here? Where if he gets a drive for 2024, I won't say has he deserved it, but he's obviously done a good job. But there's probably a lot of people out there that could have done a good job.
Well, they're in a tough situation with Chevrolet that it might be difficult to even find a gig that will fit Barry, that will help him in the long run. Because there are probably a couple Chevy teams out there, but they're not at the top of the echelon.
No.
So either unless JRM moves up the Cup, it's going to be a tough sell to get Barry moving up to the Cup Series on a Chevy team without those rights available.
Yeah, but people have been like, I'm sorry, Frank, go ahead.
No, I said the JRM up to Cup is always the on again, off again news. So that's I believe it when I see it.
But I
believe it when somebody has a $30 million, because obviously he wants to do it, but he doesn't want to spend his own money on that charter.
But I get your point, Rich. I think people say the same thing about the 18 or 19 car, Joe Gibbs and Xfinity. You could put anybody in there, they'll do well. Even Joe Graff has done feasibly okay. Sure, I think it was Richmond he didn't have the best of luck or run, but otherwise he's done serviceable. He's been serviceable. Yeah,
so it's there's probably a pretty long list of people that could have jumped in that 9 car and done just as well. Now the kid's taken his, as I say, he's taken his opportunity, which is hey, good luck to him. But yeah, I think people are getting a little bit overhyped here.
Yeah, I thought he had a good showing at Bristol. I was he was. I thought he was lights out there in the last.
Yeah, laps.
He was doing everything right, and then he just got caught up, and
easy to happen at Bristol. So, guys, on that note, we are out of time. So, good final thought there, Louise. I want to thank you, Richard Lee. Louise, appreciate you guys coming on. I want to thank our producer, Keith Hayes, and Sinister One Productions for making us look good. Certainly better than we look in real life, especially Richard.
Oh, come on now.
You've got to earn your keep, Keith. You got to keep.
Yep. So I want to thank iHeartRadio, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and certainly Facebook Live. But most of all, I want to thank you folks that watch us every week. Until next week, good night.
Thanks for watching Drafting the Circuits. Make sure to follow Drafting the Circuits on Facebook, Spotify, Twitter, and YouTube. Drafting the Circuits is a Code Sinister One production.